All right, welcome back, Hatt Clan Fam. We've got an awesome video lesson for you today. We're talking all about how to play in the style or stylings of Spanish guitar. This is a super awesome lesson with all kinds of different takeaways that I think you'll get from this lesson, as well as me giving a live lesson to a subscriber. So this person who is in this, her name is Morgan. She's a subscriber and a part of the Hatt Clan Fam, and we talk all about Spanish guitar. So I hope you really like and enjoy. All right, everybody, super cool. We have a live lesson today. By the time you see this, it will be post live, but we have a subscriber. She was the winner of the 1,000 giveaway, and her name is Miss Morgan, and I'm super excited to have her on a live lesson here. And we're going to talk about a couple different topics that Morgan is interested in today, all around the aspect of Spanish guitar. So this is super cool. We have kind of three different little techniques that I think are kind of like the culmination of like Spanish guitar. I'm not obviously from a Spanish speaking origin country or anything like that, but I have a little bit of experience in some of the Spanish music. So let's get to it. All right. So firstly, Morgan had some questions about the guitar that I have here, and I kind of get questions about this guitar a lot. So I figured I would kind of explain here before we get into it. So this is what we call a Godin, Godin, pronounced Godin, Multiac Nylon. They're made right in Canada. And what's really awesome about these guitars is, as you can see, there's no sound hole or anything like this. But I have all these different settings here. Now, a typical acoustic guitar has what we call just one active pickup, which means it gets all of the strings resonating together and can put that into an amplifier. The reason why Godins are so awesome is because I have 6 individual transducers. So it's almost like I have 6 pickups for every single string. And I have a volume control, I have a volume control, a treble control, a mids control, and a bass control. So you can get all kinds of really awesome tones out of this guitar. And what's also nice about this is this also has synth access. So it's called Nylon SA. And SA, again, stands for that synth access. So what that means is you can plug this into a synthesizer. And you can make this guitar be any single instrument that you can think of, which is really cool. So yeah, I love this guitar. I've been playing this a lot. I use this guitar for practically everything nowadays. It's super cool. Okay, so let's kind of get into some of the ideas of Spanish guitar. So one of the foundations, I think, and it's a really common progression, is we want to start thinking about the progression of how we get this idea of Spanish guitar. And one of the most common progressions, which I'm sure you've heard before, is like this A minor to a G major to an F major to an E. Yeah, it already sounds kind of Spanishy, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the big things that we want to kind of talk about is what we call a Rumba Strum rhythm. Now, I kind of think about this in terms of like when you hear a lot of Spanish music, this is kind of like the overlaying part that kind of goes with Spanish guitar. And I'll kind of play a little bit of an idea of it so that you can kind of get an idea of what it'll sound like, and then we'll go into it and kind of break it down. But again, this is all over just A minor, G, F, and E major. It kind of goes like this. So there's a couple different things that we have to think about in this. So I kind of consider this in 2 different parts of this Rumba Strum. And it's all with the fingers here. And how we kind of start it is I break it up into 2 parts. And the first part is we go down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers, and then we do a slap, which we call a golpe, which is Spanish for slap, G-O-L-P-E, golpe. And so I like to break this down in 2 different parts. So let's see if we can do this together. So you're going to go down with the thumb, and this is, again, all over the A minor chord. And if you want to play it down here, too, you can play any version of it. It really doesn't matter. But so
I'm totally a beginner, so explain the A minor for me.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. So what we're thinking about, if we're going to think about it in this position down here, I'm going to have nothing on the thickest low string. I'm going to have an open A. my second finger is going to go on the D string of the 2nd fret. My second finger, or excuse me, my third finger is going to go underneath that, so it's going to tuck below that, and it's going to go on the 2nd fret of the G string. And then your first finger is going to go on the 1st fret of the B string. So you're going to have that A minor chord. Now, with the strum type of pattern that we're thinking about, and for right now, we'll just focus that we're really just more focused on the strumming in the right hand, not necessarily with the chords. The chords will come later. But so what we can do is we can just mute the strings for now and just only apply just this pattern. So what we're thinking is we're going down with the thumb, up with the thumb. So let's just do that part. So down, up. Yeah. So down, up. Just kind of like that, the thumb action. Yeah, that's the idea. Very good. Now, what we want to try to do now is after we do this, and I should also apply a count to this. So this is like the 1 and. So 1 and, 1 and, because this is in 4/4. I should have said that. So we're thinking about counting in groups of 4. So 1 and on beat 2, we're going to go down again, but this time we're going to go down with our fingers. So what I'm thinking here is you can either use like your 1st and 2nd finger, or if you want to use your 3rd finger too, you can. But we're just going down with the fingers. So kind of fanning out like that. Right, exactly. That's the idea. So now if we can put those previous steps together, we would have this. With the thumb, down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers. So that action. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, and you're like halfway there already. So 1 and 2. So down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers. So down. So if you're just to mimic this without actually having the guitar, down, up, down. So down, up, down. So one of the things is, if you notice, I kind of use this like hitchhiker thumb thing. So I kind of keep my thumb really erect, right? So when I keep it out like this, then it kind of just glides through them pretty easy. Down, up, down, thumb up, fingers out. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Now, in this position, after we do our fingers down, we have our fingers down like this. So now, the only thing we have to do now is we have to go up with the fingers. So what I'm doing is I really just use my 1st finger, and I bring it up like that.
Oh.
So yeah, you can use more than 1 finger if you want. There's really no wrong or right way to do it. So all together now, you'd have this. Down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers, and then up with the fingers, right? So if we're applying a count to this, we're thinking 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Now this is my favorite part of it. The golpe. That's a slap. So that comes right on beat 3. So a good way to kind of keep your timing in this is if you're getting the slap right on 3, your timing is really, really good. That's the most important thing. So think about always using that as like your division between the first part of the movement and then the second half. So real nice and slow. Down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers, up with the fingers, and then golpe. Yeah. So essentially, you're going to get this, and this is the first part. So 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. So real nice and slow again. Down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers, up with the fingers, and then slap. So. And then if you get it really fast.
Oh.
But that's okay. Take your time. You try to. It took me a long time to get. I don't consider myself even an expert in it, but. So,
Quick question too.
Sure. Yeah.
So, well, it might not be a quick explanation. I don't know, but so you were playing. I asked you what the name of a song was, of a Spanish song that you were playing in one of the videos.
That piece?
Yes, beautiful. I looked up a tutorial on it, and they kept talking about, instead of talking about, I guess the chords exactly, they kept saying things like E3, A2, and I didn't know what any of that meant.
Okay. So there's two possibilities of what they meant by that. That could either mean string numbers in accordance with fret position. So like, for example, if they were to say, let's say low E string 5, that would be 5th fret of your low E string. If they were to say like 7th fret of your B string, you would go, okay, well, here's my B string, here's the 7th fret. So they probably just meant either they're corresponding with the strings and the fret positions, or it could be depending on the key that they're in. Like, let's say if we're in a specific key, they could say, okay, the 5 of G or something like that, which would be a scale degree. So like, for example, in the key of G, the 5 of G is D major. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they could be like, okay, well, you need to play the 5 in G, which would be a D chord. So there could be, it could either be the fret positions and the finger positions, or it could be that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it does.
Yes, but that was Villa-Lobos. He's a Brazilian composer. That was Mazurka Choro number 1.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite.
I find it easier to reach chords if I hold my guitar up at an angle too.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, is like with most like classical guitar and Spanish guitar, for that example, a lot of the times you'll see players, they'll hold their guitar like this and they'll have it really, really high up at an angle like that. And that's because most, like this guitar, for example, is not a very good example, but most traditional classical guitars have a wider nut length, which means the spacing, the width of the fretboard is a lot higher. Normally they're like 2 inches. So it makes it more of a challenge to play like this, because when you're doing really, really long stretches, because the fretboard is wider, it's harder to do those things. So when you move the guitar up at an angle like this, it's easier to navigate the fretboard and do those types of stretches, just because the fretboard is so much wider.
I see.
But this is a nice, this is not what you considered a true classical guitar, but it's like what you would consider like a hybrid. But anyway, I super love it. It's super, super cool. I think it's just beautiful.
Wow.
Anyway, so let's get back to this Rumba Strum. So up until that point, we would have the yeah, that's right. Yeah, and if you were to apply that count, whether you're doing counting the beats, you're thinking 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3. Now, since we are counting in 4, we still need to complete beats, the end of 3 and beats 4 and the end of 4. So how we're going to do that is, now this is the half of this, the beginning of it is not that hard. It's putting it together that makes it where the challenge may lie. But after we do the golpe, our hand is in this position where we need to go up now. So we're going to go up the string, and then that would be the and of 3. So from 3, you go golpe, up, golpe, up. Yeah, exactly. And now we need to complete beats 4 and. So how we would do that is we're just going to use our fingers again, and we're going to go 4 and. So we're going to go down, up with the fingers. Yeah. So from the golpe, you would go golpe, and then up, and then down, and then up. And then you would be down, you would do a whole circle of that again. So here's the first half. Down with the thumb, up with the thumb, down with the fingers, up with the fingers, golpe, and then up with the fingers, down with the fingers, up with the fingers. So it sounds like a lot, right? It is. It's kind of a lot, but real nice and slow. This is what you would get once you put both of these parts together. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So remember, that's always going to be on beat 3. So that's always going to help you kind of keep you know, in terms of counting, it'll help you keep your place. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. And then once you eventually get it up to speed, then you can start applying to that whole chord progression. And that whole circle of all this movement would be one bar. So 1 count of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and over your chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That would be a fun lick to teach. We'll get into that in a second. But anyway, that would be like your really kind of your introduction to a Rumba Strum. And this is not, I say Spanish music loosely because obviously there's tons of Latin American countries and all kinds of Latin American influences of Spanish music. So this could vary depending on what region you may be wanting to listen to. Like this could probably be common to Mexico, but in Spain it might be different, you know. Yeah. So just keep that in mind as well because, you know, there might be variations as far as where some of these hits lie. For instance, the golpe might not land on 3, it might land on 2 instead. Like it just depends on maybe the region and what kind of music they play over there, because this is just like it's an umbrella, and then everything else kind of falls underneath it. So I don't want you to think like this is the only way that you have to do it, because there's all types of variations to it. Okay. So again, that would be, you know, played all over your A minor, to your G, to your F, and to your E. Now, one of the really, really cool tricks about how to get some of that Spanishy sound is when you're on the G chord and you're on the F chord, you let the high E ring out below it. And another way that you can make it a little bit more tense too and get that kind of Spanishy sound is your E chord. You just move it up a half step. And it instantly kind of gives it that tense Spanishy kind of sound.
Yeah.
Now the cool thing about this too is there's these techniques where you see, I do this a lot in my playing, and it's where you actually rake up the strings from the bottom string up. So when you're on a chord, for example, like let's say I'm on A minor again, I'm actually scraping through the strings upward. So I would have something like, and you kind of get this circular wave.
You do that one more time, you froze. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, sure. So like with my A minor chord, what I'm doing is I'm actually playing all the strings down. So I'm going 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. And then I'm rolling up the strings. So what you basically do is you take like your ring finger. I suppose you could use your middle finger, but I commonly most use my ring finger, and you're actually scraping up through the strings like that. And having longer nails is really helpful for that too. But you can do this on any single chord, and it kind of makes it, kind of gives it that cool, twangy sound. There's a specific Spanish word for that. I can't remember what it's called, but basically it's just where you do that technique. You scrape up like that, which is really, really cool.
The entire song?
Well, it depends on like I don't know. Well, it depends on maybe what kind of song it is, and maybe like if there's like a slower part or something and they want more sustain through the chords. And then maybe they do the, you know, know, I don't know. It may just depend on the situation that they use it. So I use that kind of sparingly because it sounds cool though. You know.
Yeah, it does.
I like that.
I feel like if that were an entire song, it would be a really cool piece.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, so there's another kind of aspect that we definitely need to talk about because this really kind of makes up a big sound in Spanish music is what we call a rasgueado. And a rasgueado is basically this idea of this is really more applicable to most flamenco guitar styles. And what it really is it's this idea of flicking out the fingers like this against the strings and like a fan. So if I have my fist like this, yeah, so almost like, I don't know, like let's say you're gonna fight someone, right? You're getting a fist and you want to go bam, 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 bam. Almost like flicking your fingers out like that. That's what we call a rasgueado. So yeah, not so much of like a wave though with your hand. So keep your hand stationary like this and go bam, 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 bam. So my fingers kind of look like this from the front side.
Yeah.
And when I do that, maybe it's easier to see it in practice here. So if I'm doing a rasgueado, I have my thumb planted on this string here on the low E. And what I'm doing is I'm going to hit all of those strings like this. So I'm going pinky, ring finger, and then middle finger, and then first finger. So this is super, super cool because when you're doing this, that's where you get your big Spanish sound, right? So similarly to the first Rumba Strum that we did, after we do the flick out of the fingers, we're going to actually go an upstroke with our first finger. So if you could think about this in like 4 different parts, right? So you have your pinky, your third finger, middle finger, your first finger, and your first finger is going to strike up. And by the time your first finger is up, your other fingers are already going to be tucked in to get ready for the next roll. So it's almost like, think about it in this is be like a 16th note rhythm. So 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and so I'm putting basically 1/16th note per finger really. So da 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 da, pinky, and then ring, and then middle finger, and then first finger, and then first finger comes up again. And that's what
I'll hold my guitar up. So
yeah, go for it. Let's see that.
And then up.
Yeah, so your first finger, very good. But with your first finger, instead of doing all of your fingers up, just your first finger. And the reason for that is we only want to use our first fingers because we have to get our other fingers back in position for the fan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So because if we were to use all of our fingers again, then we would have our fingers extended like this, and then we're off the beat. So we have to keep our fingers. So da 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 da. So notice on my upstroke with my first finger, my fingers are already getting back within this fist position to get ready for that. So if I'm just, if I'm not even thinking about the guitar right now, and I have my fingers like this, da 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 da, and then from this angle. So now most people do the rasgueado starting with their fourth finger and going out. And I also have seen some people do it where they start with their first finger and they go first finger, middle finger, third finger, and then pinky. I'm not a big fan of that because the way that my mind works, the anatomy of the hand wants to close like this. So when I do this, it feels awkward, even though really your pinky is your weakest finger. But for me, it's easier to fan out this way than it is to go. I don't know. I feel like there's more tension in my hand going this way. When I use my pinky, oops, sorry. I'm trying to get any notes. So da 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 da. So and over a chord. big, like, loud Spanishy sound. So, like, for example, like that riff that we'll teach you in this in a minute, but like that riff that I did earlier. That's a Rasgueado at the end of that. So what I would do is that when you're practicing this, is don't even worry about the chords, because really it's more of a right hand technique than it is in the chords. It's more focusing really on getting this movement. And what you can do too is, like, I would, if I had a pencil, I would use a pencil, but you could, do it like where you are just practicing that, or you can practice it against the strings like I was doing, or you just sit there and practice.
Wait, can you repeat that?
Yeah.
You said I could do what? Because you froze for that entire part.
Oh, sorry. So what you could do is, like, if I had a pencil and I was just using my finger, for example, you can just practice that motion of going through your fingers like that. And really that motion, da, 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 da. And you want to do one finger at a time. So, It's different, because the other thing with the Rasgueado, and I'm still trying to work on mine and get better at it, but these are muscles in your hands that you don't normally use. Mm-hmm. So it can be cumbersome in the beginning, because when you're doing this, when do you ever use this type of muscle movement? You don't.
True.
So it takes a while just to get your fingers kind of used to it. It's just like, I don't know, when you first started learning how to play guitar, in the beginning process of that, it's like trying to get your fingers to do what you want them to do. It's hard, right? Because your fingers are just not used to using this muscle. There's all kinds of tendons and stuff that are going on in our fingers, and we don't ever use them on a daily basis like this, So again, that's really just practicing this fan technique. And there's all kinds of different variations of a Rasgueado, because this one is, again, what we would call like in 16th notes, where we're using a 4-finger or a 4-stroke is what they would call it, where you do, because you'd have your pinky, and then you'd have your 3rd finger, and then your middle finger, and then your 1st finger, and then your 1st finger strikes up again. There's Rasgueados where it's only a 3-stroke, where you only use the first 3 fingers. It just depends on what type of stroke. Then there's like Rasgueados that use 5 strokes, where you use your thumb in there too. It gets crazy, ridiculous. Oh. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of the idea of that. So we have the Rumba Strum, we have Rasgueados, and now we also have, we talked about this kind of idea. And we talked about the chord progression too. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about too, because I played this a couple different times, is this is a really, I say it's Spanishy, but it's like really, really cliche, but. Ole. Okay, so what that is you're gonna have your open 1st string, and then after you hit your open 1st string, you're gonna go to your 1st fret on the 1st string, that up to your F. Good. And then you're gonna go, then you're gonna go to G, so you're gonna go to the 3rd fret on your high E string. Good. And then you're gonna jump back to the F, so you're gonna go. Good. Good. And then you're gonna go open. Yeah, that's the idea.
Cool.
Now, the cool thing is you just move that entire fingering up 1 string set. So do the same exact thing on the B string. So open, 1, 3, and then 1 and open. So you just repeat that. Yeah, that's the idea. Exactly. Very, very good.
Do you keep working your way up?
No, well, I suppose you could. I mean, I just know when I've seen it. And then normally I would end on a E chord right after it. So I would go. And then, you know.
And the E chord is the A minor, but like a step up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like your A minor chord, just move it up a string set. Yeah. Cool. So that's really, really cool. So like if you, sometimes I played this at like if I was at a gig and there was like dead space, or we were at a rehearsal and there was dead space, I would play this. And everybody would just be like, what's going on? It's kind of fun. Yeah, very, very cool. Now there is, I know this is a lot. So just to recap, we talked about the Rumba Strum. And this is the beauty about YouTube too, is anybody that's maybe watching this, and even yourself, can always go back and kind of review some of these things that we talked about. But this would be also good video content for me to make on the channel. But yeah, so we talked about the Rumba Strum. We talked about the chord progression, kind of our typical chord progression for Spanish music. We also talked about the rake, the up rake, doing that. We talked about the rasgueados. We talked about this riff here, excuse me. Now, one of the other things is, now I don't really know where the exact origins of this is, but I think it's more Cuban than anything. But you hear this all the time on like Spanish music, and I don't really know where it originally came from, but it sounds like this. So, wait, how's it going? Have you heard that before?
I've heard that before. My dad plays that kind of music when he cooks.
I don't know if it's like I don't know where it comes from, but it's definitely Spanish. I want to almost say that it's like Cuban or something. Okay, so really what's that?
Oh, I said it's very beautiful.
Yeah, it's super, super cool. Okay, so yeah, that's what I should know too. There's a lot of like the Spanish music. It's all about like this tension and release. So like, you know, there's some tension, then you get to the or I've heard that. I use Spanish. I don't know where it comes from, but anyway. So this is the idea. What I'm doing up here is I'm doing this little top of an A minor chord. So I have my first finger barring these top three strings at the 5th fret, the E, G, and B, and my third finger is coming over to the 7th fret on the D. And I'm not even worrying about the E or A string, so I'm just playing this top of this A minor chord, really based out of that shape.
You said bar the 5th fret?
Yep, 5th fret, yep. And how I'm getting that sound there is I have my middle finger here. So what I'm doing is I'm actually coming down on the 6th fret of the B string, which is our F note. So it's almost like kind of like a hammer-on thing. And then what I'm doing after I do that part, and the picking pattern really doesn't matter that much. I mean, I kind of just improvise around that. And what this here is really based out of this this E major chord shape. And what I have here is my third finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the D. My first finger is going to be on the 4th fret of the G. And my second finger is going to be on the 5th fret of the B. And I'm also going to hammer on with my pinky to get that F note. So you're just kind of changing positions here. So here's that A minor with the F, and then this slides down. So and then maybe add a Rasgueado. sounds kind of cool, right?
Yeah, it does.
So that's the other takeaway is like, once you kind of start getting comfortable with these techniques, you can add these into all of your playing and they sound super, super cool. So like, that's what's just so beautiful about music, and especially guitar music, is so much of it is based on really kind of the perspective of the person who's playing it and their own take on the music. And unless you're trying to be a true purist and you want to play exactly to in a recording, then there's a time and place for that. But for me, I always like seeing how I can either develop an idea. So if I'm learning a song, other than like classical music, because classical music, you got to be like, right, everything has to be played correctly, everything on the page. But like this type of music, there's so much room for improv in it and to create your own version of it, if you will. So like with this, you know, you can add in different things. You could do the Rumba Strum with that. You could do the Rasgueado with that. You could do the upstrokes with it. You know, you could do tremolo with it. You know, you could do all kinds of cool different things with it. Also, I should note, this also comes from, I'm not really sure what the origin of this either is, but there's like this really, really common aspect in Spanish music where you have a chromatic bass line that occurs over top of a chord. So like when I played this, for example, that bass line, right? So, and you can hear it over top, da, 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 which is super, super cool. And what that really is, again, that's just based out of that A minor chord. And I'm just kind of walking that bass line down and then moving my fingers around it. So I have A minor here, and then I'm just dropping my second finger down to get this bass note, and then that bass note. And then in order to get this one, I have to reposition my fingers. So I just use this finger instead. So real nice and slow you'd have. You know? It sounds super, super cool.
Sounds very dreamy.
Yeah, I know, right? It's almost got like a, almost like kind of nebulous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds super, super cool. So again, just to recap on that idea, that is, again, kind of just really based off the same minor chord. And the only thing that you're really doing with it is just moving the bass line in this chromatic aspect. And you could move this to any single key too. Like let's say you wanted to do it in the key of E, which would be all the way up here. You know, you could make a whole progression just based on that. So here would be the A minor. You know, just moving between A minor and E minor. Let's see, I'm curious if, it would even work in a major aspect. How would I do that? It'd be hard to do it that way, but you could do it in major. So like instead of A minor, I would have to free finger my hand position. Yeah, so you could do, this would be cool. I did not plan this, so this is all off the cuff. But that's that. So notice the difference in the play between the major, or the minor, excuse me, and then in the play in major. It sounds, that sounds really, really, really pretty too.
It does. I think I definitely like the minor a little bit more, but the major sounds pretty too.
Yeah. The minor, my ear kind of gravitates towards that too. This is a little bit too pretty. I don't know if that can be a thing.
I need to do more study on, I guess, chords, because you're saying you have to play on the like E minor scale, but I don't know what that is. So
no, yeah,
I gotta do some more research on that.
Sure, yeah. This is one thing that I like to do on the channel too, is like my channel has been primarily made up of so much song-based tutorials, and which is fun, and I enjoy that. But I would really like to do more theory-based lessons. The only problem was with that, me being such a small channel, those theory-based videos don't get the views. I mean, I don't get a lot of views, but the videos that get the most views are the ones that are teaching how to play a song, because people want to learn how to play a song. And so when I do the theory song or the theory lessons, I really like those because how can I help? No, sorry. My phone. But when I do the theory lessons, I think people get more out of them, but people don't watch them as much. But one thing that sorry, I missed that.
Because you're saying theory, and I think it's saying Siri.
Yeah,
got it.
I'm saying theory. But so what I would suggest for studying, and this is a good application to anybody who may be watching, is figure out the chord that you are trying to play in, or the key, and figure out the scale around it. So I'll demonstrate. So let's say we're in the key of A minor, which is what we've been in this entire time. No matter what position I decide to play that A minor in, there's always going to be a scale that's going to be back to that shape. So this is what's so nice about guitar, is when you learn a specific chord shape, whether it be here, here, or even here, or here, you can always find a scale that goes back to that chord shape. So for example, since I started here, here's my A minor scale. Now, no matter if I play it here, you can add in the raised 7. That's a good takeaway, because I think so often people can get confused because there's so many ways to play a chord on the guitar. There's infinitely many ways to play a single chord. And so to understand that is to always connect the chord shape back to the scale. Because wherever there's a chord that you're playing, there'll always be a scale that's around it, because the scale is outlining the chord. So really a chord is taking notes from a scale. That's what a chord is. So like in the case of the A minor scale, how we make an A minor chord is we're taking the 1 from that scale, the 3rd from that scale, and the 5th from that scale. Do, me, sol, me, do. In major, it would be do, mi, sol, mi, do, right? If you know your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And so always kind of understanding that there's always a chord shape that goes back to it. And you can start to like figure these things out by plugging in a chord and figuring out the notes that are around it. So for example, this A minor chord, all of the notes in the A minor scale are in the chord shape. So look, check this out. Here's a note in that chord. All of those notes, they're all in that scale. All right embedded in that chord shape. It doesn't matter what chord you may be on. If you were to do, let's just pick G, because G major. All of those notes are right around that chord shape. The arpeggio. Even the licks, like when you're starting to do improvising and doing lead guitar, like those are all right in that scale, right around that. And that's what's the beauty about it. So like sometimes you'll see like people improvising, like, oh my God, how do they do that? How do they do that? And it's like, well, it's not really that hard, because you just play the notes in the scale in some fashion or order, and that's how you get melodies and stuff, right? So I think sometimes like guitar is always like, you know, thought of as like this really like expansive instrument where it's like, oh my God, you have to be so musical to be able to do this, or you have to be gifted. And it's like, obviously that's not the case, because there's tons of people that play music and create really, really awesome stuff. And I think it's just a matter of building your knowledge to be able to understand. It's like, think about every single thing that you learn when you're learning the guitar, think of it as a tool. And maybe sometimes you don't use those tools right then and then, or right then in the now, but eventually you will. So for example, everything that we worked on today, like these Rasgueado techniques and all this stuff, you might not apply it into your playing tomorrow. But down the line, if you continue to work on it and practice and you can do it, then it's like when you do need to use it, you can use it. You know, and that's the awesome thing about like building up your technique and being able to do all these technical applications, because you know, if you're only good at one thing, well, that's great, but we want to try to become as versed as we can in multiple things. So that way, you know, if we, you know, that's why, like, I don't know, an artist, sometimes you might be listening to an artist and they might have all these genre influences in their music. And you'll be like, okay, I hear some jazz elements here. I hear some Spanish elements here, or I hear some maybe classical elements here, right? And it's like this combination of everything. And that's really true for a lot of music, like Spanish music, for example. A lot of the roots came from classical guitar and, you know, being able to play these classical things. And then they wanted to push the boundaries of it. And they're like, okay, what can I do with this classical stuff? You know, what can I do with this? How can I make it more, you know, what's the next level to that? You know, and that's kind of how you get all these like musical milestones in these different eras of music. Really, really, really cool stuff. But yeah, again, just to reinstate, I would really just practice getting comfortable with the chord shape that you may be practicing and figuring out the scale that's around it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Do you have any, it does make a lot of sense.
Good.
Because I've been practicing scales anyway, so now that I know what to do whenever I practice a chord, I always practice a scale around it, like you said.
Sure.
And then as well, I was wondering, do you have any tips on bar chords at all?
Sure.
Because those, I feel like my index finger is not strong enough to hold everything down.
Sure. So one of the biggest things with bar chords is like you mentioned, kind of getting the strength in your index finger. And how we kind of approach that is the biggest thing that I think is often overlooked and not paid attention to the most is the thumb. So the thumb plays such an important role in guitar, at the left-hand thumb, I should say. Well, and the right-hand thumb, but for bar chords. Because this is what is our vice grip. It's what holds our hand. So, for example, let's say I'm going for this G major bar chord. What I want to do here is I want to make sure that my thumb is in the middle of the neck, behind the neck like this. Right between really the midsection of the chord. So like right now, I'll put my thumb up so you can kind of see it. You always want to kind of keep it in between the chord. So what I mean by that is like, here's my fingers. You want to keep it in between, because if we have the thumb all the way back here, you're never going to have a good grip. If you have it all the way down here, you're not going to have a good grip. You want to be right directly behind it. And when you're doing the bar chord, you don't want to have your thumb too high up and you don't want to have it too far low, because just like you saw, if I have my thumb really high up, my whole wrist and elbow and everything moves up, and this is not, you're just never going to be able to grab this chord correctly. If I drop it down in the middle, look at how my hand changes. Bam, I'm right in position. So if I'm too high up, I'm all uncomfortable, cockeyed looking, and it just doesn't look good, right? I drop that down.
Yeah.
Bam. Now, the reciprocal of that, or the reverse, if I have this too low, then my hands are going to be not in a good position either. So always think about that. Always check your thumb position. And you always want to have your thumb straight up and down on the back of the neck too. So you want to have it kind of running perpendicular with the neck. If you have it running parallel like this, like hitchhiker thumb, that's just you're going to have a really, really hard time grabbing chords, because eventually when you're starting to work on different chords, you might have a chord that's like this. Oops, sorry if I can play it right.
Oh, good Lord.
So this is a chord shape that's got a lot of stretches in it, right? Or you can have chord shape like this. You know, if I have my thumb all the way up here, like I'm never in this lifetime ever going to be able to grab this chord. If I have it too far down, I'm not going to be able to do it. If I have, so whatever the chord shape you may be practicing, like even like this. My thumb's in the back of the neck, just like where it needs to be. If I have that thumb up here, I'm never going to grab that. So just kind of always think about that. That's a really, really good question. If you're ever grabbing a chord that has a big stretch, always check your thumb placement, because again, a lot of the times you can, I would say probably like 95% of the time you can resolve chord-based issues with the thumb placement. There are some pieces of music, like there's this one Antonio Leroux piece that I've worked on that has a stretch like this, and I kid you not, it's that long, and it sucks to play. It's just for one part of it, but you're stretching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frets that you have to stretch. You have to get this G and this high C, and that's hard. But if I had my thumb all the way up here, there's no way I'd ever be able to do it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. One thing that I want to note too about the scales that we talked about, and I don't want to forget this because this is important too, and I've talked about this in some of my videos, is every single scale degree in a scale, meaning like in a major scale or a minor scale for that mode, there are 7 notes. So again, in G, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have 8. 8 is our octave, where the note, where the scale just repeats again. So G, B, D, E, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Each one of those scale degrees refers to a chord. So that's why it's really important to start understanding what kind of makes up a scale and how a scale is made, because if you can play in a key, then you know every single chord that belongs in that key. So for example, in the key of G, our first note is G, so we have a G chord. Our second note is A, so we have an A minor chord. Our third note is B, so we have a B minor chord. Our fourth note is C, we have a C major chord. Our fifth note is D, we have a D major chord. Our sixth note is E, E minor chord. Then our seventh note is an F sharp, we have an F sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord. And then we have our G again. So the 1 is always major, 2 and 3 are always minor, 4 is major, 5 is the dominant, 6 is minor, and then the 7th will always be a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which I know that seems like a lot right now, but you also just want to kind of think each one of the scale degrees is always going to refer to a chord, no matter what key you're in, whether that's major or minor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Awesome. Do you have any questions about that?
So far, no. I'm just going to practice that.
Very, very cool. Okay, so for this scale position, for G major, we're thinking of just kind of a cage position here. So this is 1 octave, and then we have the second octave, and then descending. And essentially what we're doing here is I have my second finger on the 3rd fret of the low E, which is our root, our G note. And then I'm going to use my pinky finger, my 4th finger is going to jump up to the 5th fret on the low E, and that's going to be my A note. So we're going to have this. Now we're going to go B, C, D. And so I'm on the A string, and I'm going to go 2, 3, 5. So, and then on the D string, I'm going to go 2, 4, 5. So that's going to be my E, F sharp, and G, or my La, Ti, Do. So that 1 octave. Oops, sorry. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G.
Okay, I'll try. Let's see. 2, 4, 5.
Yeah, there you go. Very nice.
Hey.
Yeah. Good. Now, if you want to complete the octave of that, you would go from that G on the 5th fret of the D, you would go second fret on the G, fourth fret on the G, excuse me, fifth fret on the G, so you'd have that. So 2, 4, 5. Good. And then on the B, you would have 5, or 3 and 5. 3 and 5 on the B. So you go. Good. And then on the high E, you would go 2, 3. So that's your F sharp and your G. Tito. So collectively, you'd have. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna get really fast at you.
Oh, yeah, you'll get there. Everybody does. It's just practice and work on these things just a little bit every single day, and you'll get there in no time. Awesome. Well, this has been really, really fun. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And
Yes.
I just want to thank you for being supporting of the YouTube channel and everything. I haven't really been doing it all that long, and I'm hoping that it just continues to build momentum and grow, because this is what I love to do. It's my passion, and I could really never see myself doing anything else in my life other than this. This is where it's at for me, and this is all I want to do, and this is really all I do. So it's cool to have support like that. So I just want to send an appreciation post for you for that.
Absolutely. I'm glad to see you making your milestones. You're gonna do really good.
Well, thank you.